Welcome, deep divers. Let's cast our minds back, way back, to the year 325 AD.
Okay.
Imagine a dusty, bustling town, Nicaea. It's in modern-day Turkey now.
Right.
Hundreds of Christian bishops are arriving. Picture this. Many have traveled for weeks through really dangerous, unforgiving territories.
It was a major undertaking.
Absolutely. And they're not just carrying, their robes and staffs. They're bringing something far more potent, potentially volatile.
It just,
Different versions of sacred texts, wildly varied interpretations of faith, and really fundamentally clashing ideas about what Christianity truly was.
and that's the crucial point, isn't it?
Yeah.
What often escapes our modern understanding is that before this specific council, Christianity wasn't this single unified religion we sort of picture today.
Not at all.
No, it was more like a kaleidoscope of communities. Each had their own cherished writings, their own unique understanding of Jesus.
Like what kind of differences?
Well, some believed he was divine right from birth. Others saw him as a man who became divine. And then you had groups holding that he was distinct, even subordinate to God the Father. The theological landscape was incredibly diverse and, well, sometimes deeply contentious.
Okay, so given that landscape, the Council of Nicaea, it wasn't just some quiet theological chat over tea, was it?
Hardly. No, this was a calculated move,
Mm.
a political maneuver, you could say, a powerful catalyst that would irrevocably reshape Christianity.
And in that reshaping.
In that process, certain books, texts offering vastly different views of early Christian beliefs were systematically sidelined, suppressed, some even destroyed.
So today we're going to try and pull back the curtain a bit on what really happened at Nicaea. We'll explore those writings deemed too dangerous to survive.
And discover how this single event fundamentally altered the course of, well, one of the world's largest religions.
Because what you might think you know about early Christianity, honestly, it's probably just a fragment of the whole story.
That's a good way to put it.
So let's tackle a common assumption straight away. This idea that there were always just four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and that these were, the accepted accounts right from the start.
Yeah, there's this
A standard view. But my understanding is, before Nicaea, Christian communities across the Mediterranean were actually using dozens of different Gospels, Acts, letters, apocalyptic writings. Is that right?
Absolutely. The sheer variety is, frankly, quite staggering when you dig into it.
Like what? Give us an example.
Okay, well, take the Gospel of Thomas. This text isn't a narrative like the others. It's a collection of sayings, mysterious sayings attributed to Jesus.
Sayings, not stories.
Mostly sayings, yes. And it presents him not primarily as a sacrificial savior, but more as a wisdom teacher, someone revealing hidden knowledge. The focus is intensely on direct spiritual experience, inner awakening.
That sounds different.
It is. Its opening line is incredibly striking. Whoever finds the interpretation of these sayings will not experience death.
Wow. Will not experience death. That's a profoundly different emphasis than the canonical Gospels.
It really is. It shifts the focus inward toward understanding.
How else did these other texts challenge sort of conventional thinking or portray key figures differently?
Well, consider the Gospel of Mary, as in Mary Magdalene.
Okay.
This text positions her as one of Jesus' most trusted disciples, spiritually advanced, someone to whom he revealed teachings he didn't share, apparently, with the male apostles.
Really? He told her things he didn't tell Peter or the others.
That's what the text suggests. And intriguingly, it depicts Peter and some other male disciples as being jealous of her insight and influence.
Jealousy among the apostles.
Seems so.
Okay.
And it's crucial to note this. This text, unlike much later traditions, never, ever characterizes her as a reformed prostitute. That came much later.
That's a huge reevaluation of Mary Magdalene's role then. Were there other texts exploring relationships in maybe unexpected ways?
Oh, definitely. Take the Gospel of Philip. It suggested a much more intimate relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene.
How intimate.
It even describes them kissing frequently, an image that, as you can imagine, scandalized some of the male disciples, according to the text.
I can imagine.
And it also delves into concepts like sacred marriages, divine unions, ideas that echo practices found in ancient mystery schools. These texts, they painted a really vibrant, complex picture of early Christian spiritual life, much more varied than we often assume.
And the really significant thing here is that these weren't like obscure pamphlets from some tiny fringe group, right?
Not at all. These were cherished scriptures. They were actively used by established Christian communities all across the Mediterranean world.
And we know this how? Just from mentions here and there.
We have references, yes, but More concretely, we know from incredible archaeological discoveries in the 20th century, particularly the big one at Nag Hammadi in Egypt,
Ah, Nag Hammadi, I've heard of that.
right? These finds revealed just how extensive this early Christian library truly was. They unearthed over 50 different Gospels and hundreds of other Christian writings, all circulating before Nicaea.
50 different Gospels, that's amazing.
It changes the picture dramatically.
Okay.
So the burning question becomes, given this incredible diversity, what caused such a radical shift? This move towards suppressing hundreds of texts and eventually consolidating down to just the 27 books we now call the New Testament.
What was the catalyst?
The primary answer, most scholars agree, lies with one man, Emperor Constantine.
The Roman emperor.
The very same. Yeah. He'd recently converted to Christianity, or at least adopted it politically, and he found his huge Roman Empire fractured, seriously fractured by intense Christian infighting.
Fighting within Christianity.
Oh, yes. Disputes so severe they genuinely threatened civil stability. It was a political problem for him.
What were they fighting about?
A major flashpoint was the Arian debate, named after Arius, a presbyter from Alexandria. He taught that Jesus was subordinate to God the Father, created, not co-eternal.
Okay, subordinate.
Yes. And this directly contradicted the emerging belief, the one gaining traction, that Jesus was co-eternal and equal with God, a theological distinction that would fundamentally shape Western Christianity for centuries.
But Constantine, was he really that interested in the theology itself?
Well, that's the key point, often overlooked. His primary interest probably wasn't theological correctness. He was an emperor. He desperately needed political unity.
A fractured Christianity meant a fractured empire.
Precisely. And he needed one, standardized version of Christianity to help hold things together. And he needed it fast.
Okay, so if we connect this back to Nicaea, those bishops gathering there weren't just academics debating theology in a vacuum.
Not at all. They were, in a very real sense, political actors.
Yeah.
Each bishop represented different factions, different regions, different collections of texts even. They arrived with their preferred interpretations, their vision for Christianity's future.
So the process, deciding which books were in and which were out, the canon.
It was far more contentious and politically charged than the sort of serene, inspired process many people imagine. It wasn't simply about divine inspiration hitting everyone at once.
It sounds like it was about power, influence, whose version of Christianity would win out and dominate.
That was certainly a huge part of it, which brings us to a crucial question. What specific content in these non-canonical texts made them so, well, dangerous to the emerging Orthodox Church and Constantine's unifying vision?
What was so threatening about them?
Well, first, think about the challenge they posed to hierarchy, a big one.
How so?
If, as something like the Gospel of Thomas suggested, every single individual could potentially have direct access to divine knowledge, that inner awakening, well, what's the fundamental need for priests, for bishops, for elaborate church institutions mediating that experience?
It pulls the rug out from under the whole structure.
Exactly. It undermines the developing structure of religious authority,
Yeah.
a direct threat.
Okay, that's hierarchy. What else?
Then there was the profound challenge to gender roles. If women, like Mary Magdalene in some texts, were portrayed as spiritually equal, maybe even superior to male apostles.
Like in the Gospel of Mary you mentioned.
Precisely. If that was the case, how could the emerging church justify excluding women from leadership, limiting their spiritual authority? It flew in the face of the patriarchal social order they were reinforcing.
Another major challenge.
And thirdly, these books often offered a different path to salvation. They emphasized salvation through gnosis, direct experiential knowledge of the divine, an intuitive, transformative understanding.
Not just belief?
Not just belief in doctrines, or submission to the church hierarchy, or even solely through Jesus' death for sins, though that was present in some forms too. But gnosis, that inner knowing, was central. The Gospel of Thomas, for instance, really emphasizes self-discovery, finding the kingdom of God within you. It's a deeply personal, empowering journey.
Right, and you can see immediately how those ideas, direct access, challenging gender roles, salvation through inner knowledge, would clash directly with Constantine's political goals.
Absolutely. He and the bishops, siding with the emerging Orthodox view, needed texts that emphasized unity, hierarchy, the clear authority of church leaders.
They needed a version of Christianity that could be a unifying force for the empire.
Exactly. Not one that encouraged individual spiritual seeking that might bypass authority or challenge the established social order or potentially fractured society even more.
So this political calculation...
It led directly to what you can only really describe as a massive literary purge. Books that didn't align with the newly established Orthodox position were systematically branded heretical.
Dangerous labels.
Very dangerous. Possessing these texts became risky. Copying them became a crime. And gradually, through a combination of state and ecclesiastical pressure, they just started to disappear from Christian consciousness. They faded into obscurity.
And this wasn't like flipping a switch overnight, right? This suppression took time.
Oh, centuries. It was a long process. You had to persuade scribes or compel them to stop copying these texts. Libraries needed to be purged. Teachers promoting these ideas had to be silenced.
It sounds like it created what some scholars call a conspiracy of silence.
That's one way to put it. And perhaps even deeper, a kind of collective trauma around certain forms of spiritual inquiry. It shaped how Christians understood their own history for generations.
What makes this even more significant, potentially, is that many of these excluded texts might actually preserve earlier traditions about Jesus, older layers of teaching.
That's a key point many scholars argue. Yes. Those who have meticulously studied the Gospel of Thomas, for instance, linguistically and culturally, suggest many of its sayings are likely older, perhaps more authentic than some material in the canonical Gospels.
Older than Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John?
Some elements, yes. Which means, and this is quite remarkable when you think about it, that some of the earliest, maybe most authentic teachings of Jesus could have been intentionally excluded.
Simply because they didn't fit the agenda.
Because they didn't fit the political and theological needs of the 4th century church leaders who were shaping the canon.
The implications of that are, well, they're staggering, aren't they?
They really are.
It suggests that what we think of as traditional Christianity today, the version taught in most churches, it might be a later development, a kind of refined construct that pushed aside earlier, potentially more authentic versions of Jesus' original message.
It's a strong possibility. By the time Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire, under Emperor Theodosius, around 380 AD.
Right, that was the next step.
By then, the vast majority of Christians would likely have never even heard of these alternative texts. Their existence had been almost entirely erased from common knowledge.
Almost erased, but not quite.
But, as history often reminds us, suppression is rarely absolute. Things survive. Hidden copies, against all odds, manage to last.
And this is where the story gets really dramatic, isn't it?
It really does. This is where Nag Hammadi comes back in. 1945. Near this town in Upper Egypt, a local farmer is digging, maybe for fertilizer, and his shovel hits something hard under the desert sand.
Not treasure, exactly.
Not gold, but arguably more valuable to history. What he unearthed would send absolute shockwaves through biblical scholarship. 13 leather-bound codices.
Codices, like ancient books.
Exactly. Hand-bound books, not scrolls. And inside, over 50 texts. It was like finding a lost time capsule buried for over 1,500 years.
Incredible. And these books weren't just lost, were they? They were hidden.
Deliberately hidden, far from it being an accident. They were concealed by early Christians who knew that just possessing them had become incredibly dangerous, possibly a death sentence.
When were they hidden?
Carbon dating and context suggest they were carefully buried sometime in the late 4th century, maybe around 390 AD, right when the imperial crackdown on heresy was reaching its peak.
So they were preserving them, hoping someone would find them later.
It seems that way, preserving them for future generations, hoping their message might resurface someday.
And the discovery itself, what impact did it have?
It profoundly challenged almost everything mainstream Christianity teaches about its own origins. These texts revealed a far more diverse, mystical, and philosophically sophisticated early Christian movement than most people had ever conceived. It opened up a completely new window.
And what's so fascinating, I think, is that these recovered texts aren't just dusty old documents for academics to argue over.
Not at all.
They seem to offer really practical guides to spiritual development, things that feel surprisingly relevant even today, cutting through centuries of dogma.
Indeed.
Yeah.
They consistently emphasize that direct experiential knowledge of the divine gnosis, that intuitive, transformative understanding over just blind faith in external doctrines.
Knowing versus believing.
In a sense, yes, or at least knowing through experience. They champion transformation through inner awakening, through personal access to divine wisdom. The Gospel of Philip makes this really explicit. It says, "Those who say they will die first and then rise are in error,
Okay.
if they do not first receive the resurrection while they live. When they die, they will receive nothing."
Receive the resurrection while they live.
Yes. It's a call to immediate, active spiritual awakening right now in this life, not just a deferred promise for after death.
That's a profound shift in focus, isn't it? From waiting for an afterlife to an invitation for present inner transformation.
It truly is. And furthermore, these texts often suggest a pretty radical idea
Yeah.
that divinity isn't just out there, it permeates everything, including us, human beings.
Divinity within.
Yes. The Gospel of Thomas has that famous saying attributed to Jesus, I am the light that is over all things. I am all. From me all came forth, and to me all attained. Split a piece of wood, I am there. Lift up the stone, and you will find me there.
That's beautiful. It portrays not some distant external God, but a universal indwelling presence.
Exactly. And what's particularly compelling to many people today is how many of these teachings parallel concepts found in other major wisdom traditions.
Like what?
You see echoes of Buddhist thought, Hindu philosophy, Taoist ideas, Sufi mysticism. For example, that Gospel of Thomas saying, become passersby.
Become passersby.
Yes. It strongly resonates with Buddhist teachings on non-attachment, non-identification with the fleeting world. It points to a kind of universal wisdom current.
That's an incredible connection. It suggests a much broader, maybe interconnected spiritual landscape across different cultures.
It certainly opens up that possibility. And if we connect this to, say, modern understanding, their insights into consciousness, into psychological integration, even the structure of reality, they show surprising similarities with contemporary research.
How so? Modern science.
Well, the Gospel of Mary, for instance, gives these detailed instructions for navigating different levels of consciousness during spiritual ascent. It's almost like an ancient roadmap for inner transformation.
A roadmap.
Yes, and it resonates with reports from experienced meditators today, or even discussions in things like neurofeedback research about brain states. It suggests a very practical, experiential understanding of the mind that was largely sidelined in Western thought for centuries.
So this raises a really fascinating possibility, doesn't it? What if Jesus himself was actually teaching a form of mystical spirituality? Something more aligned with these universal wisdom traditions than with the institutional religion that later bore his name.
It definitely makes you reconsider the standard historical narratives.
It does.
And think about the what if. Just consider, what if these texts, this kind of Christianity, had been allowed to flourish? Western culture might have evolved very differently.
What might have been different?
Well, perhaps we'd have seen more egalitarian spiritual communities developing. Maybe more sophisticated methods of consciousness training integrated right into mainstream spiritual practice. Perhaps a much more seamless bridge between spiritual insight and scientific investigation. The path of direct experience might have stayed central.
Instead, what happened?
Instead, the mystical, the experiential dimensions of Christianity were largely pushed underground, sidelined. This led to this huge emphasis on external authority, on believing the correct doctrines, on moral behavior as the primary path to salvation.
And the suppression created barriers.
It effectively created theological barriers, things like the later developments of the doctrine of original sin or the absolute insistence on the uniqueness of Jesus' divinity in a way that closed off similar paths for others. These largely shut down the path of direct spiritual experience for many centuries within the mainstream.
But these recovered texts, the Nag Hammadi Library, they offer a chance to reconnect.
A powerful opportunity, yes, to reconnect with what might be called the mystical heart of the Christian tradition. They challenge not just specific Orthodox theologies, but potentially the entire structure of institutional religion as it developed.
Because they preserve this practical wisdom.
Yes, wisdom about consciousness, spirituality, human potential, wisdom that feels incredibly transformative and relevant today.
So when we circle back, the core question isn't just what books were removed, it's why. Why were they considered so dangerous they had to be systematically eliminated?
And the answer seems to be they represented a form of spiritual empowerment, a direct access to the divine, and that was fundamentally incompatible with institutional control, with the political unification sought by emperors and bishops alike.
Okay, so the Council of Nicaea, in its main goal, it succeeded, didn't it?
In its primary objective, yes, it forged a unified Christianity, one that could and did serve the political needs of the Roman Empire. But in its efforts to erase dissent, it ultimately failed to eliminate the deeper truths that Jesus, according to these other texts, apparently taught. Those truths survived, hidden away in desert caves, waiting patiently for a time when humanity might be ready to rediscover what it means to be truly awake, truly alive, truly free.
And now,
Now the texts have been found. They've been translated. They're widely available. The suppressed history has been painstakingly uncovered. This alternative vision of Christianity they offer, it's been revealed.
so the question now is for you, the listener.
Exactly. Are you ready to explore this recovered path? To rediscover the mystical depths that might still exist within this tradition, hidden in plain sight perhaps?
Because what these texts ultimately offer,
Yeah.
it isn't just knowledge about the past, is it?
No, it's potentially powerful guidance for the future. An invitation, really, an invitation to transform how you understand yourself, your potential, and maybe your relationship to that divine mystery that, according to these texts, permeates all existence.